Madam President, I wanted to come down today, as I did yesterday, to talk about this incredible opportunity that we have before us with this bipartisan immigration bill that we are considering now in the United States Senate in regular order in the United States Senate. And I hope that we have a process on the floor now that we're here that mirrors the one that the Judiciary Committee had, an open process where people can offer amendments that they care about, one that has a spirited debate on a variety of important issues, so the American people can have the benefit of a fully transparent and deliberative process over these important issues. In the Judiciary Committee process alone, over 300 amendments were filed and 200 were considered, and over 140 of them were actually adopted by the committee, and that's the way this place ought to work. And I think it'll strengthen this bipartisan bill to continue to take other people's ideas. What we didn't do in the Judiciary Committee, and what I hope we won't do on the floor, is accept amendments that will disrupt a very carefully negotiated balance in the so-called Gang of Eight or Group of Eight, 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans who worked hard together to try to get to a place that could actually work. And today there's been a lot of talk, and over the past few days, about the border security issues, and the border in particular, and preventing future waves of immigration. And I didn't come down here to negotiate any particular amendments or to litigate any particular amendments. I did want to give a little bit of context of where we arrived in the Group of Eight on this issue. The bill as written makes very serious investments, takes major steps to secure our borders. And I have to say the work was informed most principally by 2 border senators, John McCain and Jeff Flake, both Republicans representing the great state of Arizona. And as they have pointed out, and as we have pointed out, we actually, contrary to some of the rhetoric around this place, we've actually made a lot of progress over the last decade. It's not perfect, but we've moved in the right direction. As you can see, Madam President, from this chart, in 2012 alone, our expenditure on border security and immigration enforcement, this is before this bill that we're talking about now that makes more investments in border security. Our investment exceeded $17.7 billion. That's what the American people spent on border security, which is 23% higher. Just on border security, that is 23% higher than the $14 billion we spend on all the other federal law enforcement agencies combined. I think that would surprise the American people to know that. This is what we spent on the border security. Here's the Border Patrol, here's ICE, together about $17 billion, a little more than that. That's more than we spent on the FBI, the DEA, the Secret Service, the U.S. Marshals Service, the ATF, all of those law enforcement agencies, all of them combined in 2012 before we passed the law that's in front of us. That's what we spent protecting the border. And to hear some people around here talk about it, you'd think none of that money had made a difference. You'd think none of the increased border agents have made a difference. Well, as of January 2013, the U.S. Border Patrol had 21,370 agents in total, 18,000 of whom are on the southwest border. That is an increase from 1980 that represents a 9-fold increase. It's 9 times the number of agents we had. We had roughly 2,000 in 1980, and today we've got roughly 21,000, and that might be a reason why border crossings are down as much as they are. In fact, we're at about net zero this year in terms of people coming across our southern border and leaving. Now, there's still areas on the borders where we need to do more, like in Arizona's Tucson sector. And Senator McCain and Senator Flake were kind enough to take some of us down to the border to see what was really happening, to understand the topography down there, the difficulty of building a fence from one end of our border to the other. There are places where fences have been incredibly effective, like in San Diego. There are other places we're going to need other technology to be able to secure our borders in an efficient and thoughtful manner. And I have been guided, and I hope others that have concerns in this area will meet with these border senators and listen to what they have to say about how we can improve the situation on the southern border. What our bill calls for, in addition to the increases in resources, is that within 6 months of the bill passing, Secretary of Homeland Security is required to develop and submit to Congress a comprehensive border strategy and fencing strategy. We appropriate in this bill $4.5 billion. In addition to this money that you saw up here, $14.5 billion for these strategies. And the goal of this plan is to achieve persistent surveillance and 90% effectiveness rate at certain high-traffic border areas. This is places in the border where lots of people try to get into the United States. Madam President, I can tell you I've seen it with my own eyes when Senator McCain took us down there. We actually saw somebody come across the border. We saw somebody climb the fence while we were standing right there. I have a photograph of it on my cell phone, and that person was apprehended within about 30 seconds of getting across the border. It shows you that it is an issue that we need to continue to manage, but it's good news that we've seen the improvement that we've seen. And I think these goals will be met. I'm convinced by the conversations I've had with Homeland Security and with others that the objectives that we have laid out to create this 90% effectiveness rate in the high traffic areas is achievable. And it's achievable with the technologies that we propose. And if there are changes that can be made during this discussion to improve that, I'm all for that. But if the goals aren't met, people say, well, you say it's going to happen. What if it doesn't happen? Here's what happens. In 5 years, if it hasn't happened, the Southern Border Security Commission will be established to make further recommendations about how it is we can secure the border with representation from the border states themselves. We appropriated another $2 billion in this bill for the Commission's recommendations if, in fact, we ever have to get to the Commission, which I hope that we won't, and I expect that we won't. Now, I've heard people say that one of the big problems with this bill is that it's just like 1986 all over again. I wasn't here in 1986, so I can't take the credit or the blame for what happened in 1986, but it is a serious critique and a reasonable critique of that bill, that it didn't do anything to stop future flow of immigrants and illegal immigration in this country. That is a very fair critique. It's not a fair critique of our bill, because our bill deals with the border security that I talked about, as well as internal security measures in the United States of America that were completely absent in the 1986 effort. This bill includes a universal E-Verify system, and we crack down on employers who hire undocumented workers. That alone will reduce dramatically the incentive of people to cross the border illegally if they know that all across America, small businesses can run their biometric card or other ID through a database that tells them whether they're here lawfully or not, and in an instant know whether they're here lawfully or not, instead of engaging in this game that's been played for decades in this country, where people with false security cards are able to come in and get a job, and then a year later or 18 months later the employer finds out the Social Security card is no longer available. That is going to dramatically disincentivize people from crossing the border. And the small business owners I know are very happy with this, because they're tired of being the immigration police. They're tired of feeling like they went the extra mile to figure out whether somebody was here lawfully or not, and relied on a Social Security card that looked perfectly valid with a valid Social Security number, only to find out that 18 months later that they had hired somebody that was undocumented. They're so weary of this, which is why they're expecting the Congress to finally do its job and fix this broken immigration system. You know, the comparison to 1986 is unfair in many ways. And Mark Everson, who's a former deputy commissioner at the Immigration and Naturalization Service, who oversaw the implementation of the 1986 law, wrote today, just today, in the Washington Post, quote, "In contrast, the legislation before the Senate today takes a comprehensive approach. In contrast to 1986, this legislation takes a comprehensive approach. Demand for unauthorized workers can be dampened, but only through adequate attention to the workplace and interior enforcement. If anything, he wrote, I would accelerate the rollout of the E-Verify system while helping to secure the borders faster. And I hope we can accelerate the E-Verify system. And the reason is I've heard from employers who say, you know what, we're playing by the rules. We're making sure that we don't hire undocumented people for our construction business. But there are other people down the road that are paying lower wages to people that are here unlawfully, and that's an unfair disadvantage for us. And I agree with that. I think the question about how fast we can implement E-Verify needs to be balanced against the inconvenience that we pose to businesses as they get up to speed on the new system, but that's certainly something that we can talk about. Finally, you know, we have, among many other broken parts of this system, a broken entry-exit visa system in the United States. I think it would shock the American people. It surprised me to learn that of the 11 million people that are here, 40% of them are people that entered the country lawfully. They entered the country on a visa, but they overstayed their visa. And we have the ability in this great country of ours in the 21st century to somehow detect when people are coming in on a visa, but we haven't bothered to figure out when people are leaving, which doesn't make a lot of sense given the fact that the technology is available. This bill finally includes a mandatory and operational biographic entry and exit system to track those coming to the United States and those leaving the United States of America. And miraculously, finally, we're going to actually know who's coming in and out of the country. As we begin to phase in a biometric system that will build upon the other efforts being taken to track visitors in a way that's cost-effective, we are going to become more secure. We will finally know who's in this country and who should be asked to leave the United States of America. So, in my view, border security is not a reason to obstruct this bill. And as I said earlier, we're open to changes. But we already have very strong border measures in this bill. I don't want that to be overlooked. And I think when people hear that we need to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars more, they should know that we're already spending billions of dollars down there. Some of it's been effective, some of it's not been effective. I say let's do what's effective, let's not do what's ineffective, and let's not overspend at a time when we've got the budget issues that we are facing. In conclusion, Mr. President, as the USA Today editorial board has written, unlike 1986's political sleight of hand, it's not a lot of love lost for the 1986 bill, as you can probably tell. Unlike 1986's political sleight of hand, this year's legislation is a tough, credible plan for preventing a new surge of illegal immigration. A quest for unattainable perfection should not be allowed to undo the good that it would achieve. I wish I could say this was a place that let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We seldom even get to the good. But in this case, I think we've gotten to a place that's very good, and that we should move together forward as we have to this point in a bipartisan way to craft a thoughtful solution to a broken system that continues to be a drag on the economy of the state of Colorado and the economy of the United States of America. This law, if we pass this law, we will once again reaffirm a couple of things that makes the United States so special. One, that we subscribe to the rule of law. There are a lot of countries in the world where that's not true, and it's one of the principal reasons that people want to come to the United States, because it's a place where you can live up to your talents, because nobody can take it from you, because we subscribe to the rule of law. People want to come from all over the world. It's a great compliment to our country to build their businesses here and to help us grow our economy. And it will reaffirm as well the very important notion that we are a nation of immigrants, generation after generation, going back to the founding of this great country of ours. That is who we are. And if we can get this bill past the Senate, we get this bill past the House, I think we'll have done something very important for this generation of Americans, but also for the people that are coming after us. And with that, Mr. President, I thank you for your patience, and I yield the floor, and note the absence of a quorum.